Hello Photo 2, this is your demo on how to put together an HDR. So here I am in Bridge and I have selected the photographs that I want to use as my HDR. And you will notice that they are a good range of value with the darks and the lights. And I'm going to pick just a few of them for the demo to put together so it runs a little bit faster. So to choose the ones that you want, I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to choose the ones that I think will work well together, that have, the lighter areas and the darker areas, and maybe a few nice in-betweens as well. It looks like these two are very similar, so I'm going to get rid of that one. And then we've got three values that are very similar. So I selected all of them. Just a note to make sure that you remember which ones you're using to put together, because you have to fill out that piece of paper that has the aperture, the shutter, and the ISO for each picture. And you find that by going to Essentials. And if you click on just one of the pictures, you'll see all the information right over here. So once you get the pictures selected you want to use, you go to Tools, Photoshop, Merge to HDR Pro. This is going to take those photographs and open them in a separate window. And you let Photoshop just do their thing. So I want to say this while it's loading. The whole point of an HDR is to make sure that you have value in every area. So as you're editing, that's what you want to look for. Nothing should be too dark, nothing should be too light. It should all be equally exposed. Okay. All right. So here we have it. I've got my three photos down here. They are all checked. If you decide that you don't want one of them, you can uncheck it and it will just use the ones that you have checked to make your HDR. I'm going to leave all three checked. Here we go. It also tells you like what your exposure was at. So this is my 0 exposure and here's my plus 1.42 and my -3. So that's kind of cool to see down there too. All right, over here up at the top, it says preset. You could go to default, or you can see if you like any of these presets and see what they do to your picture, right? You can always start with one of these presets and then adjust from there. I'm going to start just at default, right? Next under that is the remove ghosts. So if you see any ghosts, which that did a pretty darn good job right there. If you see anything, like if any of the branches moved in the wind or anything like that, you could click on Remove Ghosts. When I click on Remove Ghosts, notice that it has a green box around the first picture. I could change that. And what that is actually doing is it's actually bringing the picture that I select kind of like to the front, so that it's in front of everything else and reading that as like the main photograph, and it changes the way it looks. So you can play with that. You might like the way it looks if you select a different photo. This is the edge glow. So by changing the radius, the strength, and the edge smoothness, you change how it finds the edge of your objects, right? And this makes a big difference for some things, because a lot of times in HDR, you start to see, check that out. You start to see lines around the edges of things. And sometimes you might not like that. So you might want to like bring that down, right? Or smooth that out, right? Tone and detail. So here's your like overall exposure, right? Here is the detail. This is where it starts looking like that crazy HDR picture that a lot of you don't like, but some of you do like. So you could bump the detail all the way up. I always look at gamma as sort of like how contrasty or non-contrasty it is, right? You're bringing out some highlights and some shadows and that sort of thing, right? In here, that looks a little better. Don't want to overdo it. That's the thing with a HDR. You could very easily overdo it, and you don't want to do that. If at any time you start seeing white lines around objects, like say you have a tree line and you're seeing this white outline around the tree line, that's called a halo, and that means you've gone too far, right? You want to take that down, right? Like right now, I really do not like what this sun is doing right here. That looks awful. I want to try to fix that a bit. But right now, when I'm working with this gamma, I'm looking at all of this down here and bringing all this in. So here's where you're going to do, I don't know, I'd say most of your editing, or maybe we should even start here first. But here's your shadows and your highlights, right? So I want to bring the shadows and try to work on that highlight. I wonder what would happen if I select a different picture. It's still there. Oh my goodness, it's still there. Okay, don't like that sun. Got to get rid of that sun somehow. It's not doing, haha. I'm going to get rid of this picture because that's where it is. So I'm going to get rid of that one picture. So that sun doesn't do what it's doing anymore. So here's your shadows and your highlights. That looks so much better, right? Pull in the shadows, pull in the highlights. If you want to up your color, up some vibrance, there you go. I got a little more blue in my sky now. Saturation just makes it, ugh, you know, like too much kind of. But the vibrance, if you up the vibrance, it takes the dull colors and pulls them out, right? So I'm just going to play with some of this really quick here. I also really like the curve, right? Because you have a lot more control with the curve. So down here is your darks, your midtones, your highlights. So I'm going to put a point here for my midtones. I could start adjusting my midtones. I could start pulling up my dark areas, right? And what can we do with this highlight? Yeah. So that sun's really bothering me, you guys. Right here. Not nice. Don't like it. I would probably work on this a whole lot more to try to tone that down a bit. If it wasn't a demo. But you get what I'm doing here, right? You get it. Okay. So the whole point is you pull out as much detail or as little detail as you want. I know some of you do not like that like super overdone HDR effect, and some of you really like that. That's, you know, your own personal preference. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. We are looking for the detail, the value, the color, the exposure to be level in all areas, like even it out. That's your goal here. Nothing should be too bright, nothing should be too dark in your photograph when you're all done with this. Okay. That's pretty much it. That's really it. Once you get it looking good in here, you press OK. It pulls it into Photoshop. You could do other adjustments on top of it if you wish. In Photoshop, any of your Photoshop adjustments, you could save it. I would definitely save it as like a Photoshop document, as well as like a JPEG. And then we're going to print them. We're going to print them big. It's going to be great. They're going to be beautiful, right? So have fun with that. Try not to overdo it. And enjoy making your HDRs. There it is. There he is in Photoshop. All right. The end. Bye-bye.